In 1982, Disney released a movie so ambitious, so bizarre, and so far ahead of its time it became a banned cult classic that would change cinema forever. It's time to jack in, grab your light cycle, and hit the grid. Because behind that glowing cyber world is a treasure chest of facts that Hollywood tried to forget. These are the 10 weirdest things about the original Tron that you never knew. Number 10. The Oscar it was banned from. Here's the thing. Tron is remembered today as one of the first movies to lean heavily on computer-generated imagery. But here's the twist. When Disney submitted it for consideration at the 1982 Academy Awards, it was actually disqualified from the Best Visual Effects category. Want to know the crazy part? The Academy actually disqualified it for cheating. The same Hollywood that now spends billions on CGI once decided that using a computer didn't count as a special effect, and so Tron was banned from the category entirely. In their eyes, real visual effects had to be handcrafted. Things like physical miniatures, optical compositing, matte paintings, and clever camera tricks. Using a computer to help build your world wasn't seen as groundbreaking. It was seen as cutting corners. It's wild to think about now, but the people making that decision truly couldn't wrap their heads around computer imagery being a legitimate artistic tool. They saw it more like pushing a button than actually creating something. Never mind that Tron's effects required enormous teams of artists, animators, and programmers working frame by frame to bring the grid to life. Fast forward more than 40 years, and it's hard not to laugh. Nearly every modern blockbuster, from Avatar to Avengers Endgame, is practically a CGI symphony. The technology that got Tron blacklisted from Oscar contention has become the very foundation of big-budget filmmaking. Imagine walking up to James Cameron today, right after finishing The Way of Water, and telling him, sorry, computers don't count. You'd probably get a very long stare, and maybe a politely worded lecture about how half your favorite movie moments simply wouldn't exist without them. In other words, Tron wasn't just ahead of its time. It was so far ahead that even the people in charge of rewarding innovation didn't know what to do with it. It's about to get more intriguing. So don't hesitate to hit that like and subscribe button. Number 9. The CGI is way less than you think. Here's a twist that surprises a lot of people. Tron is famous for being a groundbreaking pioneer in CGI, but only about 15 to 20 minutes of the entire movie are actually computer-generated. That's it. Out of a 96-minute runtime, the majority of what you're seeing isn't digital at all. It's old-school, analog movie magic, dressed up to look like it came straight from a computer. So what about all those iconic glowing suits, neon lines, and surreal landscapes? Well, here's the mind-bender. Most of them weren't done inside a computer. They were shot in black and white on 65mm film, then printed onto massive high-contrast sheets, and finally hand-tinted frame by frame. The process was called rotoscoping, and it was about as grueling as it sounds. Artists would take each frame, and remember, there are 24 frames per second of film, and painstakingly add the glowing effects using a backlit animation technique. Every highlight, every electric outline, every flicker of neon, all done by hand, one frame at a time. We're talking months of work just to make the light on a helmet pulse correctly. A single minute of finished footage could take weeks to complete, and heaven forbid the lighting didn't match, because that meant going back and redoing dozens, maybe hundreds, of frames. So the next time you rewatch Tron and think, wow, early CGI was really something, just remember, half of that CGI wasn't computer-generated at all. It was the work of very tired, very meticulous artists with incredible patience and very steady hands. The kind of work that would make most of us give up after about 5 frames. In other words, Tron didn't just break ground in computer effects, it also pushed traditional animation to its absolute limits. Number 8, Jeff Bridges was wearing hockey gear. Costume designers on Tron had one of the strangest challenges in movie wardrobe history. How do you make a futuristic cyber warrior outfit that still works for live-action stunts and doesn't make your actors collapse from heat exhaustion? Their answer? Apparently hockey pads. No, really. Jeff Bridges, who played both Kevin Flynn and his digital alter ego Clue, spent a good chunk of filming wearing modified athletic gear, including shoulder and chest pads straight out of a contact sport locker room. Think less Hollywood sci-fi armor and more varsity goalie meets neon fever dream. Once the padding was on, the costume department layered him up with skin-tight spandex. Yes, in the unforgiving fashion of the early 80s, topped it off with a futuristic helmet, and called it a day. All those glowing circuit lines and energy details you remember, added later in post-production during that painstaking backlit animation process. So, if you strip away the visual effects magic, your fearless hero of the digital frontier was basically a guy ready for the world's most confusing game of sci-fi street hockey. It's the kind of behind-the-scenes image that makes you rethink every intense scene in the movie. Those dramatic, I'm fighting for the users moments? Yeah, Jeff Bridges delivered them, while secretly dressed like he was about to defend the goal against a slap shot from Wayne Gretzky. And yet, somehow it works. The combination of practical sports gear and visionary post-production gave Tron a look that's still instantly recognizable 4 decades later. Number 7. A literal inside joke with Pac-Man. The 80s were the golden age of arcade games, and Tron wasn't shy about throwing in some nods to the era's icons. But one Easter egg takes the cake. In one scene, if you look closely at the Master Control program's control screen, you can spot a tiny, animated Pac-Man cruising around the circuit board, complete with the Waka Waka sound effect. It's barely noticeable unless you're looking for it, but once you see it, you can't unsee it. That little yellow dot muncher is just hanging out in the digital world of Tron, because even in cyberspace, Pac-Man was king. Hitting that like button now sounds like a good idea, doesn't it? So why do you hesitate? Number 6. The movie got a real-life video game before it premiered. Most movie tie-in games come after a film is released, but Disney flipped the script. The Tron arcade game by Bally Midway hit arcades in 1982, before the movie was even in theaters. And here's the kicker. It was a bigger hit than the movie itself. The Tron game made more money than the film during its theatrical run. Players loved its 4 mini-games, including the Light Cycle Challenge, that's still one of the coolest sequences in 80s gaming. So technically, the digital world of Tron first lived in the arcade before audiences saw it on the big screen. Number 5. It sparked a legal battle with a tech giant. If you think Hollywood is messy now, the early 80s were no less dramatic, especially when you mix entertainment with tech companies. After Tron's release, Disney found itself tangling with none other than Magnavox. Why? Magnavox claimed Tron ripped off ideas from their game Killer Shark, which had a vaguely similar player versus electronic system vibe. The claim was that Disney and the Tron arcade game had infringed on Magnavox's intellectual property. The lawsuit fizzled without any major damage, but it set the tone for decades of disputes between game companies and movie studios. And here's the thing. Many of these tech versus entertainment legal fights that followed reference Tron as an example. In a weird way, the movie not only pushed computer effects forward, it helped define where the legal lines were drawn. Number 4. Cindy Morgan played 2 roles without realizing how groundbreaking it was. Cindy Morgan took on dual roles in Tron: Laura Baines, the brilliant computer programmer in the real world, and Yori, her digital alter ego inside the system. At the time, Morgan didn't think much about the symbolism. 2 different sides of the same character representing flesh and blood humanity and its digital counterpart. But in retrospect, it was kind of revolutionary. This was 1982, long before online avatars and social media profiles became an everyday thing. In Tron, Morgan's double casting basically predicted the modern-day idea that our digital selves might be just as important, and maybe just as real, as our physical ones. Plus, Morgan has admitted in interviews that filming Yori's scenes meant standing in a cold soundstage in a thin costume for hours, while pretending to ride light cycles that didn't actually exist. She called it acting in a vacuum, which pretty much sums up the whole movie's vibe. Number 3. David Bowie was almost in the movie. You read that right. The Thin White Duke himself nearly joined Tron. While casting the role of Sark, the movie's main villain, Disney considered David Bowie. It's not hard to see why. Bowie in the early 80s was a pop culture chameleon, and his Scary Monsters era fashion would have fit Tron's cyberpunk aesthetic perfectly. Imagine Sark delivering lines with Bowie's sly, otherworldly delivery. It would have been pure magic. In the end, the role went to British actor David Warner, who absolutely nailed it. Playing not only Sark, but also Ed Dillinger, the smarmy exec who created the Master Control program. But somewhere, in an alternate timeline, Bowie is piloting a recognizer across the grid, and we all wish we could see it. Number 2, it inspired Pixar. Before Pixar was Pixar, here's one of the most important ripple effects of Tron. It directly influenced the founding of Pixar. When Tron was released, one of the people watching very closely was John Lasseter, then an animator at Disney. Lasseter later said that seeing how Tron blended computer graphics with animation made him realize the future of storytelling could be digital. This was years before Pixar was even a thing. Lasseter's excitement eventually led to his work with Lucasfilm's computer division, which later spun off into Pixar. And when Pixar finally broke through with Toy Story in 1995, it was like Tron's neon DNA was buried somewhere in that animation pipeline. So if you love Finding Nemo, The Incredibles, or Up, you can thank Tron for planting the seed. Number 1, it flopped, and then changed everything. We can't talk about Tron without mentioning the big, ironic truth. When it came out in 1982, it was not a box office smash. Against a $17 million budget, it made just over $33 million. Not bad, but not the blockbuster Disney was hoping for. Critics were mixed, with some praising the visuals, but others calling it confusing and overly technical. But here's the twist. While it wasn't a hit in theaters, Tron became a cult phenomenon almost immediately. The arcade game helped keep the brand alive, and the movie developed a loyal fan base, especially among computer nerds, programmers, and gamers. Over time, it became the go-to example of early digital filmmaking, inspiring not just future movies, but also countless video games, visual effects teams, and even internet culture as a whole. Without Tron, the conversation around CGI and digital worlds would have taken much longer to get going. By the time Tron Legacy came out in 2010, the original had transformed from that weird Disney sci-fi flop to a pop culture landmark. So there you have it. 10 weird, wonderful, and slightly neon-soaked facts about the original Tron that prove it was way ahead of its time. From an Oscar snub to inspiring Pixar, this movie was a digital prophecy that Hollywood couldn't quite grasp yet. The funny thing is, for all its futuristic flair, Tron still feels kind of, retro. And maybe that's the real magic. Right now, you feel all fuzzy and nostalgic, yeah? For this feeling to last forever, you have to hit that like and subscribe button, because with Box Set and Chill, the 80s and 90s never end. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the grid, make sure to drop a comment below with your favorite part of the movie. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got a light cycle match to win. End of line.